Flew back to Beijing and I just broke down. I've never broken down in my life. I'm used to being someone who's go, 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 get this done, do that. I've always been so scared of my anger, but I'm feeling the love from this anger. I'm realizing that my anger is protective. Breathwork is really just like stripping away all the top layers. Sometimes those top layers are trauma-based layers. You come back to yourself. There is no such thing as bad feelings or good feelings. Oftentimes we want to cling to the good feelings and push away the bad feelings. Rather, feelings are feelings. Accept them all. Welcome them all as guests at your dinner table.
Hi everyone and welcome back to the show. I'm Tong and I'm always here with my co-host Adi. Today we're really excited because we also have a special guest joining us, Yasmin. Yasmin is a breathwork facilitator. If you're wondering what that actually means or how breathwork can actually help us in our daily lives, don't worry. We'll get into all of that later in the episode. But first, Yasmin, welcome to the show. Would you mind kicking things off by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, I'm Yasmin. I'm a breathwork facilitator. I am currently working at a wellness resort. It's an amazing center, blends Eastern and Western holistic teachings, Eastern and Western medicine, and I've been working for the last 4 months. Been facilitating breathwork for about 8 months now, so it's still a new chapter, but it's been very full on. I've worked with over 100 people now, 65 people one-on-one. So yeah, that's me, and breathwork has completely changed my life. I'm crazy about breathing, and I can't wait to share more about this magic that we all have.
Yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about what got you started into breathwork?
Yeah, for sure. So we are now in 2025. The story begins, let's say, in 2021. So 2021, I just graduated from Oxford. At Oxford, I'd studied human sciences, so it's an interdisciplinary degree that blends biological sciences and social sciences. The aim being that if we can understand both, we can bring this approach to complex global issues. For example, you might remember the pandemic. We needed the scientists, we needed the people developing the vaccine, but we also needed the people who had deep knowledge about culture, about community, about how to roll out these things. So my degree very much took that approach. We need to blend both sides. While I was at Oxford, I was very interested in political affairs and development and public health. I did my dissertation on the Thai political protests, interviewing student protesters. I did an extended essay on infectious disease. So this was very much where I wanted to be. And so after Oxford, that was what I explored. I moved to Brussels and I worked at a political consultancy called Shearwater, where we consulted with clients from around the world who were interested in the EU or interested in how EU matters would affect them. After that, I worked for the UN in Myanmar, a bit virtually because of the civil war, helping them to write reports about the situation on the ground. And then I worked for an Australian startup, trying to make giving better, like charitable giving, making it better. So that was where my life was headed. But in 2022, so this is when I was living in Brussels, in 2022, in May, I had the worst week of my life, where at the start of the week, I had a text from a friend who told me that one of our mutual friends passed away from cancer. And this friend who'd passed away, she was 23, 24 at the time, so it was a huge shock. And I was in frequent contact with this friend. She was one of my Oxford classmates, and she'd always planned to come back. And so we would be texting, she'd be asking me for revision notes, preparing for exams, things like that. And so just to hear that she was gone off the face of the earth, it really shook me. And I remember going to the Zoom funeral, and it's a very bizarre thing going to a Zoom funeral because there are all these little boxes and you see everyone crying close up, and it's crazy and also funny and also absurd, and you're like, oh my God, it's just wild. So that was how the week started, and how the week ended was I got a text from my mom saying that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And yeah, I just instantly went into freeze mode. I think when lots of things hit you, all at once, it's very hard to process, and you just go into this action, problem solving. How do I react to this situation? That's the mode you go into. And so in a matter of like 6 weeks, I completely wrapped up my life in Europe. I broke off a relationship with someone I'd been dating for about 18 months. I left my job behind and I moved to Perth, Australia, a city that I had never lived in. So I didn't really have community, I didn't really have friends there. And I spent 8 months in Perth looking after my mom, also looking after my grandma, because my mom usually looks after my grandma, and now my mom couldn't really do that. And I was also working online, so this was where I was working for the UN and for the Australian startup. And so my life in Perth, those 8 months, it just flew by. I feel like I wasn't present. I was just doing. I was waking up, making breakfast for my grandma, checking on my mom, going to class, completing a task for a job online, going to the gym, coming home, writing an essay, going to bed. And it was like that for 8 months. And then the day my mom finished chemo, I flew to Beijing, which is where I was doing my master's at Peking University. And while I was there, the year just went by super, super quickly. Classes, I was really thrown into it. But again, there was like this sense that I remember telling my friends, like, I feel fragmented. I feel like I'm not really here. Like, there's something that's up. And I kind of lost myself in the partying and the drinking and the nightlife, and it was really fun. I'd never been a partier or a drinker or a nightlife person, so I think that was already a sign, like, either this is a new chapter or something is going on.
Yeah.
And then that summer, so summer of 2023, I was awarded a fellowship to go to the States for this program, an amazing program at the University of San Diego. But the theme was conflict. And so they got together, I think, 14 people from around the world who all have conflict in their backgrounds. For me, my dad was a refugee during the Vietnam War. That's a story that's always been present in my life. And so that was my link. But my classmates, I had a Myanmar refugee there, I had a Syrian refugee there, I had a Pakistani journalist who'd been imprisoned. All of these people with conflict in their backgrounds. And we spent 3 weeks just sharing these stories about conflict. So as you can imagine, it's a very like trauma-rich environment, very, very heavy.
Yeah.
After that, I flew back to Beijing and I just broke down. I've never broken down in my life. I'm used to being someone who's go, 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 get this done, do that, use the mind to power through, discipline is everything, success is key. Those were literally my mottos. But I got to Beijing and I just broke down. Breaking down looked like not being able to sleep for 48 hours, not being able to meet my own basic needs. Like I didn't even have the strength to go to the canteen to get food. My friends had to get food for me. It looked like not being able to deal with situations. There was an ant infestation in my bathroom, and usually when things like this happen, I'm very practical. I'm like, okay, we solved the problem. But I just couldn't. I was frozen. I was just staring at the ants, and my friend had to come and clean up the ants for me. And I was supposed to go to Tokyo. Like I had 3 days changeover in Beijing. I was supposed to go to Tokyo for a different summer school, and I couldn't. I called them. I was like, look, if you make me go to Tokyo, you're going to have a situation on your hands because I'm not mentally well. Right, and so they understood. I flew back to Thailand. Didn't tell anyone I was in Thailand. Had no energy to see anyone. Like usually I'm very sociable. I like to catch up with friends, get coffee, go here, go there. I couldn't do any of that. And I was just at home and my days looked like waking up, crying, journaling, meditating, maybe going to the park for a walk, coming back home, sleeping. I couldn't eat really as well. I would have like 1 meal a day and it would be a lot for me. Like my body was just not cooperating. It was just saying like, hey, something's up. We need to slow down. My body forced me to slow down because I couldn't slow down. I couldn't consciously slow down.
Yeah.
And while I was in Bangkok, I started seeing a therapist, an amazing therapist. I was journaling, talking to friends, all of these tools, but still it just felt like something was stuck. Pimmy, one of my best friends, Pimmy, she was like, Yasmin, why don't you try breathwork? And I was like, breathing? That sounds really boring. Like, come on, I have no energy. You just want me to breathe? Why should I pay someone to help me breathe? She was like, no, you must try. It's really, really good. And I was like, I I really don't want to. And she said, okay, look, I'll pay for it. We'll do it at your apartment. You don't even have to make an effort. So like, God bless Pimmy. And then the breathwork teacher came to my apartment. It was me and Pimmy, and something clicked. It was just the first time that I'd really connected to how I was feeling, like physically, somatically in my body. Because usually I'm someone who's very in my head. I can tell you what happened, why I'm sad, why I'm, whatever emotion, what caused it, what actions I do because of this emotion, but I don't really feel it until it gets to a breaking point. And this doing breath work was the first time I really was able to tap into those feelings. Like the grief I couldn't feel, the anger I couldn't feel, the sadness I couldn't feel, all of it. And at the end, you just open your eyes and it's like you're rinsed. And this was after one session. So I was like, whoa, this is a tool I need to work with. I didn't take a psychedelic. I didn't, do anything. This was my own breath. Blew my mind, completely blew my mind. And so I started working with the breathwork teacher one-on-one for the whole time I was in Thailand. And each session, something new would come out. At the start, it was processing the things that I had known. For example, the death of the friend, the breakup, my mom's cancer. But then later on, it was things that I didn't even know were in my psyche. For example, maybe small moments in primary school, interactions with my parents when I was a child. And then I was also connecting to beautiful things, such as feeling my own aliveness, feeling my own energy, feeling the potential there is, connecting to ancestors, connecting to values. Just like, I couldn't.
Wait,
So
did you
that
say
was how
connecting to
breathwork entered.
ancestors?
Yeah.
So you felt connected to your ancestors.
Yeah. I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but you really do feel
That sounds crazy,
like you do feel a presence.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense. I mean, we live in Thailand, or at least Tong and I live in Thailand, and there's so much ancestor worship here, acknowledging that there are spirits on the land, guardians of the land. How could we not have ancestors, and how could they not be a part of our lives?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, your story is really bizarre because I think I'm also a person that knows what they're doing at all times. And whatever I'm feeling, I can really pinpoint why I'm feeling that way. But yeah, I can't imagine what you've been through, and that, once your life had been in control, now everything is kind of just like torn apart. That's really, really crazy to me. But going back to breath work, I think at Adi you haven't. I don't think you really know what breath work is either. For anyone that's unfamiliar with breath work, how would you define what it is, and what really is it?
Okay, so this is an analogy I like to use. So if you think of exercise, there's so many types of exercise, right? You have like football, you have swimming, you have yoga, you have Pilates. All of them are forms of exercise. They use the body, but they have slightly different, perhaps intentions, slightly different effects, outcomes. Breathwork is the same. So you can think of breathwork as this umbrella of practices. The most, I guess, foundational, fundamental is called pranayama. And this is one of the 8 limbs of yoga. So pranayama is from India. It's 5,000 years old, an ancient practice where you use different breathing techniques, each technique being maybe you breathe with it for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You use different techniques to alter your emotional state or energetic state. For example, there are some breathing techniques which increase the energy in the body, such as Kapalbhati, which is breath of fire, and it's something like this. I can show you. You exhale and you pull the belly button in, so it's like that. And you do that for maybe 5-10 minutes. It increases the energy in the body if you're very, very tired or just wanting more energy. Then there are practices which are more calming, more down-regulating. For example, there's one called Nadi Shodhana, which is alternate nostril breathing, where you might breathe in through the left nostril, out through the right, in through the right, out through the left. That is a breathing technique which brings calm. So as you can kind of see, pranayama as a practice is about bringing you to that equilibrium. If you have low energy, bringing you up into a regulated, balanced state. If you have so much energy, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, bringing you back to calm. Pranayama does this because it's, as I mentioned, the first of the 8 limbs So you do pranayama first. Then you do asana, which is the yoga that most of us know, the physical moving, using the body. That is to remove the tension from the body, relax the body, and then you move to step 3, which is actually meditation. So people who struggle with meditation, I often say, try breathing first, try moving, get that tension out before you try and sit and meditate. So pranayama is one type of breath work. Then the types that I work with, I would call are integrative breathing practices. So these came in the 50s and the 1960s, blending this Eastern knowledge that your breath has an impact on how you feel with Western psychotherapy, with the New Age movement that was emerging in Europe and America. So in the integrative breathwork practices, we are using the breath to bring about an altered state of consciousness. I was trained in rebirthing breathwork, and there's a story here. So the founder, his name was Leonard Orr. He was lying in his bathtub, and he was about to get out, and he was like, wait, why am I getting out of my bathtub? There's no urgency, yet I feel this urgency. Let's lie back down into the bathtub and see what happens if I sit with this urgency barrier. And he claims that certain repressed memories and emotions started to come up. He was like, I really like lying in this bathtub. How can I do it for longer next time? So he'd go back to his bathtub. Next time he brought a snorkel. So he was immersed in the water with the snorkel, just breathing in and out slowly through the mouth. And he claims to have started reliving his experience in the womb, his experience of birth. He was a disciple, Leonard Orr was a disciple of the Haidakhan Babaji, who is a spiritual teacher from India living in the foothills of the Himalayas. He's passed on now. But he moved to this ashram in India, and he started sharing this technique, sharing this practice with other people there. And he found that other people were also reliving their birth experiences. So at the start, rebirthing breathwork was all about birth. And the idea was that from the moment of conception, so when the sperm and egg fertilize, to the moment you are born, there's a lot of things happening. But we can't access that consciously because we're nonverbal, we don't really know. But when we use breathwork, we can tap into those memories, into those states. And actually now with science, with epigenetics, we find that things that happen in the womb, the mother's external circumstances, do have an effect on the child. That's pretty cool. That's rebirthing breathwork, but the discipline itself has really developed since the 60s and 70s. We still use that same breathing pattern of slow, connected breathing, but we acknowledge that trauma doesn't just have to be at birth or during conception. It can come up at later times in your life. So when we breathe, things come up, maybe emotions, maybe memories, repressed memories, and I have some stories here, and they're brought up to the light of consciousness for you to see it, for you to process it. And then after the breathwork session, usually people might maybe speak to a therapist or journal or do some kind of integration to process that event. So this is rebirthing breathwork. The other type that I want to touch on briefly is called holotropic. This comes out of psychedelic culture. So there was a researcher called Stanislav Grof who was researching people who were using LSD, a psychedelic, and he noticed that when people were on LSD, they would breathe in this way that's very rapid and connected, so similar to rebirthing, where you go like very, very rapid in and out. And then psychedelics was banned, LSD was banned, and he was like, what if we just use this breathing bit without the psychedelic? And he found that through intense breathing, people would have psychedelic experiences. So these are the 3 main types, I would say. There's pranayama, there's rebirthing, and there's holotropic. Nowadays, there are many other ones, but they come out of rebirthing and they come out of holotropic. So breathwork, in short, I would say, is using conscious breathing. So we're all breathing now, but we're not thinking about it. But consciously breathing in a way to alter your emotional, spiritual, physical states. And it actually affects all 3, which is why people can have such profound experiences.
Wow, that's a lot to take in, but I've definitely done a little bit of the first one, like the pranayama, because I grew up in India and I used to do a little bit just because I did a bit of yoga, at my park and stuff. But yeah, it was really interesting to learn about the rebirth and the other one that you mentioned. It sounds super interesting.
I hope it wasn't too much information all at once.
No, no, no. It was good. Like I was engaged. Like I was just yeah. It was a lot of cool information. So it's all good. Um, yeah. The next question I want to ask is like, how would you say it impacts your nervous system and like your overall well-being?
So, nervous system. Why do we have a nervous system? The nervous system allows us to sense things in our internal and external environments and react. That's why we have a nervous system. We have a branch of the nervous system that controls all automatic functions. For example, digestion, heart rates, breathing, everything that you don't have to think about. There's a branch of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, that controls it. Then, within the autonomic nervous system, so we're going to do a crash course biology. Within the autonomic nervous system, there are two branches. So the first branch we call the sympathetic. You can think of this like the gas pedal. You press it lightly and it's like go, motivation, energy, drive. You press it too much and you're in like panic mode. There's maybe like fear as well. So that's the sympathetic, it's the gas pedal. Then you have the second arm, which is the parasympathetic. You can think of this as the brake. So if you press it lightly, then you're able to take a break, you're able to rest, relax, digest, connect with another person, have a conversation. You press it too much and you completely stop. Maybe you freeze, maybe there's numbness, maybe you just, right? So when you breathe, you, in the style that I do, so rebirthing breathwork, you are activating both branches of the nervous system. So people often might feel relaxed but also buzzed. Why is this significant? Well, all of us have a different degree of activation of each one depending on our life circumstances. For people who have been through trauma, it is possible that they are stuck in a response. We understand trauma as the bodily response. For example, let's say someone got into a car crash and they're stuck in the car. So at the start, maybe they're panicking. So we would say that's a sympathetic response. They're panicking. How do I get out? How do I get out? But then after a while, they realize they can't get out. They're stuck in this situation. So then they move into collapse. Parasympathetic overstimulation. They just collapse. They become numb.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah.
recognize there's nothing I can do. So maybe they even disconnect. They're not really there. You can use this as a mirror for life circumstances. People in abusive households, for example, often find themselves in that state of numbness. People who maybe are used to being in a very, very, very stressful work environment, they might find themselves constantly stuck in this state of stress, in this state of over vigilance, like trying to be aware of everything. So in breathwork, we activate both branches. Every single person has a different balance of what's going on because of our unique life circumstances, meaning that in breathwork, different things can happen. For one person, it could be that an emotion comes up, maybe anger, maybe grief, maybe crying, frustration. That's their experience. For another person, maybe they tap into profound relaxation, like they've never relaxed before and they're used to always being in their head. So when we activate both in breathwork, everyone has a different experience. So that's how the nervous system comes into play. And in terms of healing from trauma, through breathwork, we bring the body to these, we bring the body down this, down this path, but we're also very conscious. Like you are aware that you are here, you're lying on this bed and you are breathing. Sometimes in breathwork, we even move into the overstimulation part. So that's usually when emotions come out or reactions come out. But then the body is allowed to complete the process because you're brought to that state, whether it's of numbness or of overreaction. And then the body can calm. So you bring that process to completion. You remove yourself from being stuck in a pattern to actually completing patterns. And while in your life you might still react, you're aware that this is a pattern. So you can come at it more consciously.
Okay, that makes sense. And also, I just want to ask, like, because you do rebirth breathwork, right? Like that's your focus. Is like this might be a really stupid question, but do they all do it in the bathtub? Like, is that how it's normally done, or are there other aspects of it as well?
Yeah, so now rebirthing is actually mainly done on land. So you can just lie on the floor and do it. So that's how I do it most of the time. But
Okay.
you can still do it in water. And those experiences tend to be more psychedelic and much deeper. So last
Mm.
weekend, I actually did it myself in water. What happens is they put floats behind your head, behind your knees, so you're just like floating in the water. It's like you're in a zero gravity tank.
Yeah.
And I was breathing, and I was feeling so free and so light that
Mm.
then suddenly I started to hear bombs, and I saw my grandparents who I've never met,
Oh wow.
like my dad's parents, because they died in the war. And
Yeah.
I was like connecting to these intergenerational memories, things I didn't even know I was carrying in the body. Because when you are in water, you're not grounded. When you're on land,
Mm.
you know, I am here, my body is here, I'm in this room, I'm in this place. But when you're
Yeah.
in water, you remove that sense of place, which is why people tend to have deeper experiences, whether that's intergenerational, whether that is reliving experiences in the womb or psychedelic, like
Hmm.
psychedelic hallucinations and um, yeah, those kinds of
Yeah, I
sensations.
guess that's the ancestor stuff I guess you were referring to earlier. But
Yeah.
yeah, like I definitely haven't had any similar experiences, but I remember like this one time being in the pool, and I was just trying to hold my breath for as long as I could, and just trying to float in the pool, like, and that felt really freeing, because I was like
Mm.
just not tethered to anything. So I think I would definitely enjoy that type of breath work because I just love the water, and just offers a very different experience.
Mm.
But yeah, thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome. But exactly what you said, untethered to anything. There's a sense of like freedom, for sure.
Yeah, it's quite bizarre to me, thinking about you being able to experience all these surreal sort of like moments, I guess you could call them. Whereas, usually when people talk about psychedelic experiences, they would use psychedelics to tap into these sort of moments. So that's actually quite crazy to me that you can achieve all of that just by breath work. There's this other question I have, which is how does breath work really compare to meditation? Are
Mm.
there are they are they linked? Because in meditation you also focus on your breathing, right?
Mm. Okay, this is a good question. Um, Yes, so with meditation, we focus on the breathing, and most types of meditation, either they want to bring you into presence, so bringing you into the here and now, feeling your body, bringing the mind here, or they are insight meditations, maybe looking deeply into the nature of a quality, such as metta, compassion. And yes, in meditation, they use the breath to try and anchor. The difference, however, is meditation tries to keep you in the here and now or to maybe sometimes give you deep insight. With breathwork, we are using the breath as a tool to unlock something deeper. So the way that we are breathing, this circular connected breathing, as I said, it is faster or deeper than natural breathing. It stimulates the nervous system, both branches of the autonomic nervous system. It also creates oscillations in brainwave frequencies. So in meditation, most people might be at alpha waves or maybe even theta waves if they're in very, very deep meditation and they stay on that level. During breathwork, what is actually happening is you are oscillating between all three, between beta frequencies, which is what we use in day-to-day life when we are, calculating, planning, thinking, discussing. We oscillate down to alpha frequencies, which are associated with creativity, meditation, flow states, and even down to theta frequencies, deep meditation, dreaming. So we're oscillating between all three, meaning that people can have, as we've said, quite untethered experiences. It's also different from meditation because we are not trying to have a clear mind. We're not trying to remove anything. No. In breathwork, when
Mm.
something comes up, whether that's an emotion, whether that's a thought, or a physical sensation in the body, we stay with it. We breathe with it. We bring our mind to it. We bring curiosity, investigating. Where is this? How does this feel? And often when we sit with it, then we can even find deeper insights. I can give you a short example. I was breathing with a woman, or I was facilitating a woman who was breathing, and she started to feel very, very angry. But for her, anger is an emotion that she has always pushed away because, you're always told,
Mm.
don't be angry, control your emotions, that kind of thing. But we welcomed the anger. We said, okay, let's let the anger be here, but let's find it in the body. Let's locate it. What is coming to life right now as you're angry? For her, she felt this sensation in the left shoulder. So I said, okay, let's stay with it. We're not going to push it away. We're not going to dissolve it. Let's just breathe with it, feel it. Stayed like that. I don't know how many minutes, let's say 5 minutes. And then she just said to me, you know, I've always been so scared of my anger, but I'm feeling the love from this anger. I'm realizing that my anger is protective. It gets angry because it's telling me my boundaries are crossed. It's getting angry because it's telling me my needs are not met. And actually, I need to honor this anger. Maybe next time in the future when I get angry, I'm not going to get angry at myself for being angry. I'm going to let that anger be there and ask it, what are you really showing me? What am I needing that I'm not receiving? So that's an example of how it's different. We're staying with sensations, allowing them to be here, not pushing anything away.
Yeah. No, that's a very unique experience, and I can see now how meditation is different from breathwork, because meditation, I think the focus is just to keep calm and clear your mind, but that might not always be the right thing to do. Like, you might actually want to focus on some things in order to get over them.
We welcome all that is here. We welcome the pain, welcome the distraction.
Yeah. The next thing I want to ask is is breathwork a substitute for therapy, or do you kind of do it alongside it, and how does that work?
I wouldn't say it's a substitute. I would say it's a practice in itself, and it works well in conjunction with therapy. I think breathwork is great for everyone, but especially for people who are very in their heads. So maybe I'm speaking to my former self, but people who are very in their heads and who are very, let's say, intellectual about their experiences. Breathwork is great because it taps you into that felt, embodied experience and can sometimes reveal even deeper parts. It goes well with therapy because you can then use the therapy session to process it intellectually. I like to say to people that I work with, when you are in the world, you are here in your body, right? Meaning that you are perceiving things in your mind, in your felt sensations, in the touch, in the smell, in the taste, in the sound. But often we only use the mind to process. We forget that the body also has its own process. Breathwork is one of these practices that really brings the body there. The mind is still there because you know what you're experiencing. And so it brings it together. Whereas therapy can often just be intellectual. At least in my experience, it can be, what happened to you? How did you feel? What do you wish you could have told yourself? Things like that. Whereas breathwork, you're feeling it in the body. So they go well together.
Right. A question I kind of thought about as well are the dangers of breathwork. Are there any dangers? Because just thinking and going back to the psychedelics, I heard that people who do take psychedelics, they can have quote unquote good trips and quote unquote bad trips, right? And these bad trips, I guess you could say, could kind of, I guess, destroy one's life if they have, a really, really bad experience that they've witnessed while taking a certain psychedelic. Is that the same with breathwork?
So, psychedelics and breathwork. I think the first thing I would like to say is psychedelics and breathwork can produce similar experiences, but the difference is that psychedelics is something you take from outside of yourself, meaning that you often have to wait for it to be over, especially if it's a bad one. With breath, it is yourself. And when you're guided by a facilitator who is trauma sensitive and who is aware of how to work with resourcing. So resourcing is what we call the things that bring you back into regulation. Right. Then it can be safer as an experience because it's easier to get out of, if that makes sense. Yeah. And also it's yourself. So your body will never give you an experience you're not ready for. Whereas a psychedelic, you take it. And so the psychedelic is facilitating something. Whereas with breathwork, it's your own body. And I can give you an example of this. So I had an example to demonstrate what I mean when I say the body will not give you what you're not ready for. So I had a session with someone who was really angry. And they said to me, I've been holding anger for 17 years. I think I'm going to have a very angry session. I was like, okay, fine. We let it be here. This person ended up having the most relaxing session ever. They said they were calm like they've never been calm before. And I asked myself, why? Why? Well, 1 hour after our session, this person had a flight to catch, a long, long, long flight to catch to go back home. So, of course, their body is not going to give them a huge traumatic release when at the back of their mind they're probably thinking, I need to make sure I get my flight on time. Have I packed my bags? As an example. So yeah, the body will not give you what you're not ready for. Oftentimes people also fall asleep, especially if they're processing deep trauma, and the body today, for whatever reason, is not ready to process it. It will fall asleep instantly. And that can be quite unexpected, because usually in breathwork sessions, the music is very loud. You know, I'm next to the person, I'm tapping them, I'm talking to them, and they just fall asleep. So I really see that our body has mechanisms to keep us safe. Sometimes psychedelics can breach these mechanisms too fast, too quickly, too soon. Whereas with the breath, because it is yourself medicine, if you want to say that. It will always go at your pace. One other thing I wanted to say. What did I want to say? Psychedelics and breathwork. The importance of integration. I think one of the problems is that psychedelics in most countries are illegal or are unregulated, meaning that when people take them, they take it without guidance, without people that they can reach out to if a trip goes badly. There's no support, there's no ground. Whereas with breathwork, it's legal, and so you have that support and you have that grounding.
Right. Is it still safe? Is it still safe to proceed with breathwork when you're by yourself without a facilitator?
Yes, it is. And I think it's often because your body will do what it needs. It will shut down if it gets to too much. In terms of safety with breathwork, that was your original question. Sorry, I'm just coming back to it. So in terms of safety with breathwork, there are some contraindications for it. For example, people who've had a brain aneurysm, people who've had lung surgery, people who have maybe uncontrolled high blood pressure. Because when we're breathing in this rapid way, we're increasing the blood pressure, we're increasing the circulation. But that being said, what is more important for a person who's working with a facilitator is open communication about any conditions. I personally have worked with people who have had conditions, including someone who had a brain aneurysm. That usually is like, no, don't do breath work. But we went very, very slowly, and because of my own experience, I was able to adapt to suit him in the ways that he needed, and it was powerful. For him, he had an aneurysm in a near-death experience and has been struggling to make sense of like why he's alive. And breathwork helped him to go back to that place, because it can be quite psychedelic, right? To go back to that place and find the answers. But we went very slowly, very safely, very calmly, always checking in. How are you feeling? Do you feel your body on the ground? Making sure that he's grounded. So I would say it's safe. It's safe generally because your body will kick in. But if you're wanting to do deep work, find a good facilitator.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have a couple of questions off of that, and feel free to not share it if you don't feel comfortable. But have you had any bad experiences with breathwork where you felt unsafe, or it was unsafe for someone to actually do it?
Me personally, I wouldn't say I've felt unsafe, but I would say I've had difficult experiences. Difficult doesn't mean bad. Difficult meaning taking time to integrate. And I'm speaking about the experience I had last weekend with intergenerational trauma coming up. I've had friends who've breathed, and they told me that things like that had come up for them, and I was like, wow, how does that happen? Obviously there's a little bit of disbelief, like, really? And then it happens to you, and you're just kind of like, oh shit. It's been a week, and I would say this week it's been a lot of processing that. And it was difficult because it required me to have conversations, for example, with my dad, and he never talks about the war or that period of his life. But I had to. And actually it was an opening for a deeper connection between the two of us, to talk about his parents, to talk about the war, things that perhaps most people might also be nervous to ask about. Topics that I've certainly, for most of my life, been nervous to ask about. So I wouldn't say unsafe. I would say difficult, challenging, but luckily I had the tools to integrate it. I spoke on the phone to my teacher who facilitated the experience. I journaled, I talked to my dad.
Moving to the practical applications of breathwork, because you know how people say with meditation it helps with stress, anxiety management, focus, productivity, all of that. Do you get the same benefits from a breathwork session, would you say?
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. There's a monk here at the resort I work at, and she says that your experience is the intersection of three things: your mind, your body, and
Hmm.
your consciousness. The issue is it's very difficult to control the mind. I'm sure you might have struggled with like long meditation sessions. It's very difficult to control the mind.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to control your consciousness too, unless you meditate for 1,000 years or, a very long period of time. But the body is something you have direct access to. And so
Mm.
simply by manipulating your breath, perhaps even with pranayama, you can instantly reduce stress. There was a
Hmm.
study that was done published by Stanford Medicine, which showed that cyclic sighing is more effective than mindfulness meditation at reducing stress. Cyclic
Oh wow.
sighing is simply inhaling to the top, inhaling again, and then sighing, just like this. And if you think about it, like naturally you sigh when you're stressed. So this is almost like amplifying a natural response we all
Mm.
have. I also know of a very, very popular technique called box breathing, where you inhale, hold, exhale, hold, equal counts on all sides, which has been proven to reduce blood pressure. And I spoke to someone this week who told me that he came off blood pressure medication solely by doing box breathing. Yeah, so it's
Wow.
really powerful. And there's also another technique called 4-7-8, where you breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 7, out for 8 counts, and that really helps with relaxation, really helps people fall asleep. I use it myself too. So I would say breathwork is almost like a faster way because you're manipulating your own physiology to get where you want, at least with pranayama.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people struggle with sleep. I think that one that you mentioned might be useful. But yeah, I think it almost feels like a hack, you know? Like I
Oh,
find it
yeah.
like I find it hard to believe that you can accomplish all of these things just by breathing. Like it just doesn't make sense. Um, but yeah, it's crazy that you can do that.
Sorry, I just wanted to turn on the light because it was
Yeah, we
really
do the
dark.
same actually. It's getting dark here.
Yeah. But no, it is definitely a hack. Like the Huberman Lab has done a few episodes on breathing, and Huberman Lab is all about hacking and optimizing yourself.
Yeah. And one other thing is like, how can you use breathwork for trauma releasing and emotional processing? Do you have any tips for that?
I would say 100% doing the deeper integrative practices, rebirthing breathwork being one of them. I would say working with a facilitator who has been trained in trauma awareness. Yeah, because often for trauma to come out, for it to be released, there has to be safety. Safety in the
Mm-hmm.
body, but also safety in the container, feeling trust with whoever is facilitating for you. And then the breath does the work. Yeah, I would say rebirthing breath work is really, really useful for trauma release.
Yeah. And like, I don't know if you remember this Tong, but I don't know. The conversation with Yasmin also reminds me of another conversation we had with Saurabh, where he
Yeah.
talked about vipassana meditation, and he talked a lot about like meditation and doing these retreats, and how that helped him. I don't I don't know if he mentioned that, but like it helped him kind of overcome his trauma and like just reset his body.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to ask you, Yasmin, do you know anything about Vipassana meditation, and if that's has any similarities to breathwork?
Mm. Well, I think one is the technique is different because in breathing, we're manipulating the breath to create experiences, whereas Vipassana, you're often just observing or following the breath as a tool to deeper insights. I personally have not done Vipassana meditation, but I can understand what you're speaking of. I've worked with people who have done Vipassana and for whom Vipassana has helped to bring up difficult emotions, difficult experiences. I would say, and this isn't a criticism of Vipassana, more a criticism of how it's usually done. I would say that Vipassana does run the risk of poor integration because you are for 10 days in isolation or in silence, meditating. And then, usually, from what I understand, so I could be wrong, it's only on the last day that you might be allowed to speak to share, and you're also in big groups. So if something comes up,
Mm-hmm.
it might be difficult for you to process that experience or to
Yeah.
even receive the support. Whereas rebirthing breathwork is usually done one-on-one, at least that's how I do it. And so you're working with that person as things come up, helping them to process, helping them to
Mm-hmm.
integrate after the session as well.
Okay.
That's really
And
interesting.
are there, just off of that, are there any breathworks that are done as a group setting, or are they all generally done in like one-on-one sessions?
So in most places, like in the cities, you can find group classes for pranayama, also group classes for rebirthing. It might go by different names, such as conscious connected breathwork, shamanic breathwork, breathwork for transformation, all of these kinds of names. Some of them are trademarked. So you can get group classes, and they can be effective as well. But I always think that for people who are looking to do really deep work, one-on-one is the best. Or actually, I think for people who are doing it for the first time or the first few times, they should do it one-on-one because you don't know what will come up, and it's useful to begin to tap into an altered state of consciousness with full support, because the things that can come up can be really, really difficult. For example, I had a woman who was breathing, and before breathing, I always do an intake. So I ask them about themselves, get their health background. And the situation she wanted to work on was she felt like she always has walls up, emotional walls, but she doesn't know
Mm-hmm.
why. So we're breathing, she's breathing. And then at the end, she tells me, I realized that I was sexually abused as a child, and I did not remember this until now. And I was like,
Ooh.
okay, let's sit with that. And so she told me about what she was feeling and what she remembered. And because it was one-on-one, we had that time to discuss. We had that time to take a
To
pause from the
process it.
breathing, feel, get back into it. And my thinking is, if something like this happens in a group class, how are you going to get that support? An issue also is with group classes, because they're done in studios and it's like, weekly basis. Most group classes don't take intake forms. They don't ask about your health condition. As I mentioned earlier, some health conditions you need to be careful. For example, having a brain aneurysm. For a person like that to breathe with everyone else in a normal way, that could be really, really harmful. Physically, for someone like the woman I mentioned, imagine if that came up in a group setting.
Yeah.
So I feel like at the start, when you're starting to get to know yourself and starting to learn how to recognize your own limits and how to regulate, because we do that in the classes, in the one-on-one sessions I do. Until you know how to do that, stick with one-on-one, then move to group classes.
Okay, I think that's great advice. And the other question that also just came up is, can you control the type of experience you're going to get? Or is it a bit random, or whatever is in the back of your head?
I would say it's a conversation. It's a conversation, a continuous conversation between your body, mind, and the part of you that is aware and controlling the experience. When we breathe, we go very, very slowly. So there's a slow come up of sensations, of emotions. And with everyone I work with, I teach them tools for how to take it a step down if it's too intense. For example, if suddenly there's a lot of emotion coming up and it's too much, I might invite them to come back to their resources, to think of things that make them feel safe. I might encourage them to slow down the breathing. I might invite them to put a hand on their body, to feel themselves here, to slow down. So there is an element of control where we're going slowly and you're always invited. Am I ready to keep breathing through this? Am I ready to keep going? It's too much, take a step back.
Okay, makes sense.
So if I, for instance, after hearing all of this, I'm interested in doing a one-on-one breath work session myself, what sort of things can I expect? Does it have to be something like trauma based, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, it doesn't have to be trauma based. I think trauma is just a topic I tend to talk about a lot, because where I'm working, people are coming usually looking for transformation, or that they're at a life transition point. And trauma is also a topic or I think knowing about trauma provides you with that toolbox to be able to work with people when difficult situations come up. But no, it's not always about trauma. Sometimes it's about insight. For example, gaining insight into your patterns. Sometimes when we are stuck in patterns, we sit with it, we feel it, and then the pattern just dissolves, and then you get that deeper clarity into a situation, into what you need to do, into a decision you need to make. So I would say breathwork is really just like stripping away all the top layers. Sometimes those top layers are trauma-based layers. You come back to yourself. So I wouldn't say no, it's not always about trauma. I've had sessions myself and others where people laugh and they feel so connected to, loved ones in their life. I had a session with a man who, for him, the big realization was, I'm seeking love from the wrong people. My girlfriend loves me so much. My parents love me so much, but I'm always trying to find love from other people. Now I want to try and tune into this love that is here. So insights. It's not always about trauma. It's just clarity. Trauma is one thing. You also get clarity. You also get insight.
No, that's great. And how can people integrate breathwork into their daily lives?
So I think pranayama is a great place to start. Just learning those tools for when you're tired, when you need more energy, incorporating them when you need to sleep. In terms of breathwork like rebirthing, I feel how to integrate it would be to find a practitioner that you trust, work with them, maybe work with them once every 2 weeks, once a week, see how it goes, go from there. Once you have breathed at least 10 times with someone and you know your own patterns and you learn these tools to regulate yourself and you become more in touch with your own physical cues, for example, what being overwhelmed feels like, what being overstimulated feels like, what being relaxed feels like, then you can start to breathe by yourself safely, because then you can hold that space for yourself at home. Because it's a breathing technique. Of course you can do it anywhere. You're just breathing.
So during the podcast, you've already mentioned multiple times that breathwork kind of had like a transformative experience for yourself. Do you still get these experiences now, even having practiced it for so long?
In my own life, you mean?
In your own life, yes. Yes,
completely. I think as a whole, it's taught me so much about myself, and it's taught me to slow down, to go at my own pace. And to just honor what I'm actually feeling. For example, there was a period of like 7 weeks where every time I breathed, I would fall asleep. No matter how loud or how chaotic it was, I would fall asleep. Right. And when I think back to that time in my life, there was a lot going on. So of course I wasn't going to have some huge momentous thing. My body just wanted to rest. So it's taught me, it's still transformative as a process, because it teaches me to respect my body and respect how I'm feeling and what's going on. I would say it's still transformative because every session reveals something new. Sometimes they are deep, such as that intergenerational trauma session I mentioned, which was just last week. But sometimes it is just insight into my current feeling, into my current state, being able to tap into the fact like, hey, I'm feeling quite stressed lately, and this is how it's playing up in my life, and these are the situations in which I'm not showing up well, or I'm showing up from that place of stress. So I would say, yeah, it's still transformative. It's a constant transformation. Maybe transformation is a bit of a, one-time word. I would say it's like looking in a mirror. And sometimes you look closely, sometimes you just look.
That's really great. How would you say, someone who's just maybe attending the sessions one at a time, what do they do after they have like a really revealing transformative session? Do they actually just take this as like a one-off thing, or do they actually try and change something once they have that revelation, I guess?
Well, immediately after the session, I tell people to ground. Grounding meaning coming back to the body, coming back to this place, to this time, maybe very hippie, but putting your feet in the grass, going for a swim, just coming back to the body. So that's the first thing I say. I say to people to ground. The second thing is I give everyone journaling questions. If they like journaling, they can write. If they don't, they can speak to a friend, maybe record a voice note by themselves. Just think about the questions. And the questions are designed to facilitate the integration process. They ask about what happened, what you saw, what you felt, what you thought, but also starting to ask deeper questions such as, what is at the root of this? Or what are subtle changes you can make in your life? And then with everyone I work with, I also stay in contact. So usually 2, 3 days after the session, I'll just text them. I'll say, hey, how are you feeling? What's going on? In terms of making permanent changes in their life, it's hard to say because most of the people I've worked with have been 1 session or 2 sessions because
Yeah.
of where I am, guests coming and going, or the people who've like emailed me or contacted me to tell me about their experience. Um, they do go on to make changes, but often the change that happens is deep. It's like a change of attitude or a change of orientation or a change
Mm-hmm.
of values. So then the actions that follow feel like water flowing down a stream. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's like they see the world or they see themselves in a different way. So then the action just follows naturally.
And that can happen just from one session as well.
Yes. Yeah.
That sounds very crazy, but I trust you.
But
But
not
like it's
always.
just like hard to
Not
process.
always.
Yeah.
Not always.
It's what do you mean? Does it not always work? Is
No, because as I said, the body gives you the experience that you're ready for. So I've had sessions
Mm.
with people who just feel really relaxed. Maybe no big trauma comes up, no big thing comes up. For them, it might be, beautiful to experience that calm after always being like anxious and stressed.
Mm.
So I would say transformative in different ways and
Yeah.
in different, in different ways. But it doesn't make it
Yeah.
less special. Like who just felt very relaxed, and this person wants to work with me to access that place of relaxation that they can't
Mm.
during meditation.
yeah.
So that's transformative in a different way, I guess.
Okay. For a person that attended your breathwork course, I guess, breathwork session, but then didn't really get that sort of experience, these transformative experiences you've mentioned, and they're kind of struggling with breathwork. How would you guide them to become more consistent with it?
Well, I think first I would acknowledge that breathwork isn't the practice for everyone. It's like there's so many
Okay.
types of sports. You don't like, different sport for different people. So I would invite them, I would say, hey, do you want to try a second session? Sometimes they just needed the first session to relax into it. Second session, maybe they might get some insight, some clarity, something comes up.
Yeah.
But again, yeah, overall just acknowledging maybe breathwork isn't for you. Maybe meditation might work better for you. Maybe journaling might work better for you. Different things for different people.
Okay.
And looking into the future, do you think breathwork will become a mainstream wellness tool anytime soon?
Oh yes. Oh yes. 100%. 100%. And you can see this already, like in the big cities, New York, Toronto, London even. There are studios opening that are 100% breathwork. Not yoga
Wow.
and just breathwork. So I think this gives you a taste of where wellness is going. I think people are also looking for tools that they can do anywhere, anytime, especially because we're becoming more mobile as a global society.
Yeah.
So yes, I think it's definitely on the up. And from speaking to people informally, it sounds like people are talking about breathwork, whether that's rebirthing or pranayama. People want to find ways to keep themselves healthy, keep themselves fit, keep themselves well in methods that are scientifically proven and cost nothing, because it costs nothing to breathe.
Right. When has this been growing, by the way? Because like, I've never heard of breathwork before, and was there like a year when everything changed and it started picking up and people started talking about it more? Was that
So
like a turning point?
I would say probably like COVID would be a turning point,
COVID.
because
Okay.
people were more at home and looking for ways to feel well. There's a business that I love called Othership. They are sauna ice bath breathwork studio in Toronto and New York, and they have YouTube videos, guided breathwork, and they are super popular. So I think people are starting to see like, oh, I can do breathing at home. It hasn't reached everywhere, but I would say it's coming up. It's probably where yoga was 10 years ago, and I fully believe that breathwork is going to be the next trend. Because, yeah, this year already there was an article in The Economist about breathwork and The Guardian about breathwork. As I mentioned, breathwork studios opening in major cities. I think it's only a matter of time until it reaches other places like Bangkok, Singapore.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're gonna
Melbourne has
listen
a
to this in
video
Melbourne,
too.
yeah, does
Mel-
it have one already?
yeah, one.
Okay. Well, there's still time. People can build more. um, but yeah. And is there a way like big corporates or other businesses can incorporate breathwork into their training programs or improve their culture at work?
Yeah, so I would say on the first level, in an everyday way, maybe doing pranayama workshops so that their staff can learn these skills to regulate themselves, to bring more
Mm-hmm.
energy when they're tired, more focus, or calm themselves maybe before a big speech, a talk, a meeting, something that they are anxious about. So I think that's one way. On the deeper way, I actually met someone who runs a people consulting organization in the Netherlands. So they
Mm-hmm.
provide services for executives to improve their being. Um, Her idea was that you have strategy consulting, which is what you do, and then you have people consulting, which is creating the manpower, creating the ability to do it. And she told me that actually they are starting to do rebirthing breathwork during
Oh,
like
wow.
retreats for some companies because it allows people to look very deeply into themselves and to also
Mm.
connect with their colleagues in a more empathetic way. And then when you create that connection, there's more of that feeling of we are a team. I see you as another person who has dreams like me, but who also has pains like I do. And so you're more willing to work with someone, collaborate with someone rather than just be like, oh, that colleague is really bad to work with, or oh, that
Mm.
colleague is really difficult, because you see the humanness of another person. So I would
Yeah.
say these are the two ways.
Yeah. And you also mentioned multiple times that breathwork can help you increase focus and your energy. Do you think it can replace coffee anytime soon?
Yeah, 100%. Go on YouTube,
So,
search breathwork for energy, try it. You'll be like, whoop, I don't need it.
like, I don't know, I don't drink coffee myself, but it's just like there's such a huge coffee culture. I'm like, it sounds like it could be a better way to, increase your energy and focus rather than drinking addictive liquid.
Yeah, yeah, for sure you can. I was doing that during my master's. I think the only thing is if someone is addicted to coffee, they might also have headaches for a while as they come off the caffeine.
Hmm. Yeah. Makes sense.
And if someone could take just one thing, like from one lesson from breathwork, what would you want it to be?
Big question, Tom. Uh, um, One lesson, I would say the simplest lesson, is just to pay attention to your breath. Often how you're breathing can tell you how you're feeling faster than your mind can.
Hmm.
If your breath is
Wow,
shallow, you're
interesting.
probably stressed. If your breath is long and deep, you're probably relaxed. Pay attention to your breath in different circumstances with different people. People who might feel disconnected from their intuition or from how they're feeling. Just see how you're breathing. If you're in a conversation with someone and you're not sure if you're comfortable or not, check, how am I breathing? Your body doesn't lie.
Hmm. That's a great insight. I think now we'll move to the closing section of the podcast. There's a few questions I would like to ask our guests. And the first one I want to ask you is like, what's the easiest way for someone to get started with breathwork? Like, is there one technique that you would recommend that people should just try when they're at home or just to get started?
I would say definitely look at pranayama techniques. It's quick, simple, easy. Go on YouTube, there's so many. It's a really nice way to just tap into the experience of changing your experience with your breath. Just recognizing you can change how you feel, whether your energies, your emotions, simply by changing your breath. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
start with pranayama.
Okay. A question we like to ask all of our guests as well is for their favorite book. Do you have one that you could recommend to our listeners? Or if you have a favorite podcast, you can recommend that too.
Like a
Or if you
favorite
have
book of
multiple.
any genre or
Yep.
of
Any
breathing.
genre. Yeah.
Non-fiction, fiction, anything.
Ooh, this is so hard. Okay, being on brand. There's a book called Brach, The New Science of a Lost Art by James Nestor. This was the book that really first got me thinking, like, breathing, interesting. But then I just kind of discarded it until I actually did breathwork myself. But
Right.
definitely read it. Super well written, very engaging, gives you a very comprehensive look at all the different types of breath work out there. So I'd say
Okay.
that. Another book I love would be Pachinko. It's a novel. I love books that are written with many voices. So it's written from like the grandmother and the children, like alternating chapters, detailing the lives of Korean people in Japan during the war. I just found it to be really, really beautifully written, really insightful. Um,
Sorry, what's the book called? Pachinko,
Pachinko.
like the machine, like the
Yes,
casino machine. Oh,
yes,
okay,
Pachinko.
right.
This is so hard. Okay, and then a book that I would say really changed my life, genuinely, is Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach. I'm not sure how to say it. Brach. It's a book that a friend gifted me, and I read it very slowly, and I feel that's the way it's meant to be read. So I read it over the course of a year. The main premise is that there is no such thing as bad feelings or good feelings. Oftentimes we want to cling to the good feelings and push away the bad feelings. Rather, feelings are feelings, accept them all. Welcome them all like guests at your dinner table. That was, yeah, mind-blowing for me because I think that we live in an age almost of toxic positivity. It's starting to change, but this age where people are like, think positive, everything is wonderful, mindset over matter. But like, no, sometimes things are actually bad. Just let yourself feel that it's bad.
Right.
Allow it and then move on. And it's a book that definitely influences the way I do breathwork as well, the way I guide clients that I work with.
Yeah. All right. And is there the last question we want to ask our guest? Is there any final message you would like to share with our audience? This could be anything. This could be a plug for something you're doing, or any final message you want to leave them with.
Okay, other than the one of observing your breath, I would say if you are curious, please reach out to me. I'm moving to London in 2 weeks, and I will be starting my own breathwork practice there, working with people one-on-one, few group classes, but keeping them very, very small. So if you want to work with me, reach out. I'm on Instagram at wavekind, so wave, like an ocean wave, .kind. Yeah, and I also travel through Paris, through Brussels, Dubai, Bangkok fairly often. So people there can also reach out and have a session with me. Finally, I do sessions online, but one-on-one is always the best to be in presence together. Is there anything else? No, that's it. That's it. Yeah. No, actually, I have one more thing. Why wave kinds? Why wave kinds? So I chose that name because I feel like waves, some waves, they're clear and they bring up nothing. It's just water. Some waves, they pull up loads of things from the bottom, whether that's seashells or sand or pollution. And I feel like the breath is the same. When you're doing a rebirthing breathwork journey, some breaths even, simple. You just feel relaxed. Some breaths bring up emotion. We let them all be here. It's the ocean.
That's beautiful. We thank you for your insights and your experiences. I think I'm still quite blown away, and I think Adi as well. Lots to take in. And
Blown away. Haha.
And
Sorry about
thank
that.
you so much for coming onto the podcast, Yasmin.